colonial modernization of religions resulted in an epistemological shift in Indian thinking. So Indian thought processes were also deeply affected. Indian morals and values were also deeply affected by the colonial modernity, right? Uh, so these are the developments which resulted in modernization of literature. And you can see they are deeply connected with westernization as well, right? They are connected with the questions of reform. They are also associated with the questions of nationalism. So nationalism became a prominent ideology after the 19th century. And one important writer who belongs to the early modern phase of Indian literature was Mirza Ghalib, whose ghazal we studied. And his ghazals, his divan, that is collection of poems, were printed and published, unlike that of, say, for example, Amir Khusro of 13th century, whose divan would be handwritten manuscript, right? And most of his compositions of Amir Khusro are in the oral domain, very much like Raidas, very much like Kabir Das, very much like Mirabai or Narsi Mehta. Large section of Amir Khusro's works are orally transmitted, right? So what is difference between Ghalib and Amir Khusro is the modern context in which Ghalib is living and writing. We also see that Ghalib witnessed 1857 from a close quarters in Delhi, right, where he saw the defeat of Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor, under whom people had started uniting to fight against the British imperialism, right, in 1857. But it was destroyed. The whole uprising was destroyed because large part of Indian leaders did not participate in 1857 uprising, right? So it is not exactly Indian freedom movement because there is participation of very few kingdoms. Like, for example, the most famous is Queen Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, who says, "मैं मेरी झांसी नहीं दूंगी," right? She is made to be a national leader, but then what she is actually saying is, "मैं झांसी नहीं दूंगी." So people who are trying to protect their kingdoms rather than the nation in 1857. But 1857 also sees the establishment of universities in India for the first time, the modern universities. Ancient universities existed on which some of you have made projects, right? You have gathered nice information on the ancient Indian universities like Nalanda or Vallabhi or Takshashila and others, right? But modern Indian universities came up, the kind in which you are and I study, came up in 1857 in Bombay as University of Bombay, University of Delhi, University of Kolkata, and University of Chennai or Madras. So the first graduates were of Kolkata University included person like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who wrote his first novel in English called Rajmohan's Wife. He wrote it for a periodical and then he left writing in English and he became one of the great nationalist novelists of 19th century, one of the most influential, and one of his most famous novel is Anand Mat in Bangla, because all of his writing except for the first novel are in Bangla. So his Bangla novel Anand Mat has this poem called Vande Matram, which became a kind of national song for India later on, right? It's written in Sanskrit mixed with Bangla. So Bankim Chandra becomes one of the great modern writers of India. And he is also the first graduate of uh, British University, that is British education system. If you remember, we also discussed Lord Macaulay and his decision to uh, uh, use 1 lakh rupees for education of Indian natives. Did we discuss this last time? Does anyone remember? Macaulay? Yes, no, maybe.
No, sir.
Okay. So uh, the story is something like this, that East India Company decided to educate the natives, that is the Indian population, and they sanctioned 1 lakh rupees in 1830s. Now 1 lakh rupees in 1830s is a huge amount. And there were two set of people who were arguing about what kind of education should be given to the natives by the Britishers. And the first school, consisting of Britishers as well as Indians, said that we should give Sanskrit, Persian, and other Indian literature, right? And they were called the Orientalist. Yes, yes, Jaswin. And the second school said that we should have English education system, and those were in people include Britishers as well as Indians, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who said that we should get education in English because English is the language of knowledge and progress and development. An idea which even people follow today, right? People even today think into 2021 that English is the language of progress and knowledge and privilege and money and status and all that. So, and intelligence for some reason. If you speak in English, then you're intelligent, right? A strange idea, actually. What has language got to do with your intellectual abilities? But that is an image that is widespread. And many personality development classes in India have spoken English components, as if your personality gets developed when you use English. I don't know whether it's true or not, but these are the associations with English that Indians had, and it was the language through which you could get government jobs, right, in those days. So Thomas Macaulay says that we will use this 1 lakh rupees for education of natives so that we create a class of people who are Indians in blood and color, right? But their minds and thoughts are Western, right? So they are Indians who are physically Indians, but they are intellectually westernized or colonized. And these people will be kind of go betweens between the rulers and the ruled. These are the exact word he uses, right? So that if British want to rule over India, they should have such people who are able to communicate uh, between the rulers and the ruled. And this in between state is also the state of privilege and entitlements. Because if you get English, then you get closer to the Sahib, right? And you become closer to the seat of power. So English became a fascinating object of desire that has remained with us. And that fascination and desire for English has only grown with globalization. Uh, so you can see that even today there is a mad rush for English, and I don't think any one of us will send our children to non-English medium schools, right? But that's what Macaulay's minute was. Minute is the recording of the proceedings of the meeting. So 1835 was the turning point in the history of Indian civilization, where the entire education system was anglicized, right? And people started getting English education and started writing and thinking in English, started reading up philosophical and intellectual text from the West. Like they read up British liberal philosophers like John Stuart Mill, or like Spencer or Bentham, and so on and so forth. They also read up Western philosophers like Plato and Aristotle in English translations. And all that become part of curriculum as well, right? And interestingly, English literature, that is literature written by Britishers, was introduced in India for the first time, right? Instead of being introduced in the West, in England, right? Why? Because people wanted to see British rulers wanted to see how people take it, because vernacular education was not looked upon with great status in those days. And when I say vernacular, means English was vernacular in Britain, right? वहां पे privilege और elite language कौन से थे? Classical languages थे, Greek and Latin, right? यानी देसी भाषा कौन सी थी? अंग्रेजी. You have to get that, because English here is the language of prestige and power and entitlement. But in Britain, English was a vernacular language, Desi Bhasha, Lok Bhasha. So literature in Lok Bhasha, Desi Bhasha, was not seen very highly and not taught in the universities and colleges. So it was only in 1857 that Matthew Arnold became a professor of English poetry in Oxford. फॉर फर्स्ट टाइम 1857 में पहली बार. यानी शेक्सपियर, मिल्टन, कीट्स, ये सब जो पोएट्स थे वो कभी भी सिलेबस में पढ़ाए नहीं जाते थे ब्रिटेन में, वो इंडिया में पहले पढ़ाना शुरू किया गया. व्हाट डू यू हैव टू से अबाउट दैट? एनी व्हाट्स योर टेक ऑन दिस डेवलपमेंट? क्या लगता है आपको? Have you heard of this? What I said just now, that English literature पहले इंडिया में पढ़ाया गया. Yes, so that's the information. So what do you make of it?
I mean, it's interesting, and I've never heard of it before. But it's possible that it's part of their savior complex as
Yes.
empiricists, that we have to spread this English knowledge, English literature. We don't need it in our country, but we need everyone else to know about English.
Right, and Macaulay famously said that one cupboard of Western learning is greater than all the cupboards full of Oriental knowledge. यानी ईस्ट में जितना भी नॉलेज है उससे ज्यादा ज्यादा अच्छा नॉलेज एक कबर्ड में आ सकता है वेस्टर्न नॉलेज, वेस्टर्न किताबों की. That was how he dismissed Oriental learning, right? Thomas Macaulay, famous. An introduction of Milton, Shakespeare had a different kind of politics to it, and that politics was that people wanted to see that how do Britishers take it. Means the education system was primarily designed for the Britishers who came to India, right? सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव ट्रेनिंग के लिए वो कॉलेज बनाए. वो ऐसे मानते थे कि हम उपकार कर रहे हैं आपके ऊपर, बता तो ऐसे रहे थे, बट बेसिकली दे आर वांटेड टू ट्रेन देयर एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव स्टाफ, एंड दे ओपनड इट फॉर इंडियंस and they charge money for it, right? So if you wanted to take English education in 19th century, you had to pay fees so that you can learn English language and English knowledge, right? So it was not done free of cost. So even if they came and said that we want to civilize Indians, they actually were selling their product here, right? And people were all too eager to lap it up. And you will find it even today. If there is a university that offers English literature, BA with English, तो उसमें सबसे ज्यादा रश रहता है, right? So that is the speciality of English literature. Other kind of speciality was that some people pointed out that studying poets like Milton or Shakespeare would indirectly teach Christian values to people. If you directly promote Bible, then people are going to oppose it. The Hindus opposed it. So this teaching by how teaching Christianity by other means, right? By clandestine means. Promotion of Western culture includes Christianity, right? So, as promotion of English literature in India also had this kind of religious political agenda. You can't convert people completely, but then you can convert people's minds, right? So, and that is what colonialism is. So, colonialism is different from imperialism in many ways, because in imperialism, the idea is you politically rule over other territories. In colonialism, you try to engineer or restructure the colonized people's minds and bodies, right? So colonialism is different from imperialism. Imperialism is empire राज कर रहा है सबके ऊपर, right? पैसे देना है बस. But colonialism is also you are trying to work on people's minds and bodies and souls and trying to convert them in some way. Convert not as into Christianity, but into Western knowledge traditions. Okay. Have I muted everyone? Or have I muted just Nityam? She unmuted herself by mistake, probably. Okay. So, let us now look at a very fascinating Indian writer about whom you already know, right? And that writer is none other than Sri Aurobindo, right? Towards the end of 19th century, Aurobindo, who was born in 1872, uh, right, was taught in a highly anglicized society, right? His parents were doctors, and your university takes its name after Sri Aurobindo because he was a formidable freedom fighter and a yogi, practicing yogi, and a philosopher, a major philosopher. He was also a polyglot scholar, right? He knew a lot of languages, and he very actively participated in the nationalist freedom struggle, right? He was he educated in, I think, in King's College, Cambridge, right? And very famously he skipped the horse riding test, flunked it deliberately so that he does not get into what is known as ICS, Indian Civil Service, a system that Britishers had designed so that Indians who were educated, uh, those people who had excellent academics, could get into administrative system. For that, you have to study abroad. So Sri Aurobindo was sent abroad in Britain to prepare for ICS, but he deliberately flunked it. And then he joined Baroda College, started by Sayajirao Gaikwad, and he became the principal of Baroda College. He taught French in Baroda, and he stayed here for some years. And he developed his fascination for Indian spiritual traditions and yoga, and he also developed a keen interest in nationalist politics of the time. So by 1905, when Bengal was divided by Lord Curzon uh, into two based on religion, many Indians were up in arms, right? That was a trigger that triggered a major nationalist movement in India, and Sri Aurobindo joined it. Uh, and then he participated in the violent freedom movement, right? Because the freedom movement in the hands of Congress had again by 1905 split into two. One was the moderate faction and one was the extremist faction. So extremist faction consisted of people like La, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, Lal Bal Pal, as they were called. And the moderates included people like Gokhale and Ranade and others who were trying to promote moderate kind of politics, which was non-violent. But through petitions and slow processes, you demand freedom, greater freedom, more and more freedom, rather than taking up a revolutionary armed struggle against the British colonialism. And Sri Aurobindo was deeply fascinated by the revolutionary struggle, and his own philosophical and spiritual leanings combined with this nationalist movement, right? And his literature that he produced in English, right, is full of this nationalist spiritualism or spiritual nationalism, if you want to call it, right, which is revolutionary, which evokes the figure of Mother Goddess as Mother India, right? So that is the important aspect of Sri Aurobindo's early literature. And he developed several philosophical, what should I say, theories. And one of the most important one that he developed is, as you would know, because you are studying Aurobindo, is integral yoga, right? And by 1910, when he had this spiritual revelation where he heard, when he was jailed for this revolutionary case, I think in Alipur bomb case, he heard Vivekananda's voice, right? Vivekananda had passed away by then, but he heard Vivekananda's voice and he left the active politics to join spiritual field totally. So he went to Pondicherry in hiding, because Pondicherry was the French colony where the Britishers could not lay their hands on Indian revolutionaries, right? So and there he established his own ashram where he met Mother Mira Alfaza, and then he started the Aurobindo ashram that you are aware of, and he developed his philosophical and literary theories, right? And he wanted to start this, he visualized this new man, new society, and he wanted to experiment that how can we realize his philosophy in everyday life. So that is his life. And he also wrote some of the most important texts like Savitri, which is one of the biggest epics written in English by an Indian author, right? Which uses Mahabharat story of Savitri for as expression of his own vision of humanity and God and spirituality. So that is about Sri Aurobindo. You already have studied. But for us, what is important is that we are going to put him in the context of Indian modernity and tradition. The dialogue that we are having on Indian modernity and tradition. And we can see that Aurobindo, who is extremely cosmopolitan, somebody who has excelled in academics in Cambridge, right, becomes a staunch revolutionary nationalist. And that is how what we started discussing about nationalism, modernity, and English language has an important bearing on Sri Aurobindo as a poet. So the poem that we have prescribed is a short one, not the full long one. I don't know if you have studied it. It's called the Triumph Song of uh, it's called Triumph Song of Trishanku. From the poems that we have, So have you studied something else by Aurobindo? Are you studying it something else? So we can join it to our discussions. What else? You have not studied anything about Aurobindo apart from what I told you? That's very sad. You have a paper, right, on Aurobindo's? No? No? Okay. No one has heard about Sri Aurobindo? And you are studying in Auro University. ऐसा कैसे हुआ? Yes, no. Are you here? Are you sleeping or what? So what have you heard about Sri Aurobindo, Trisha? That's my question. Strange. I thought, okay, the most you have heard of him about him is in this class. Okay, okay. Trisha, what else do you know about Sri Aurobindo? Yes, in the jail, right, Trisha? In the jail, he had this revelation where he heard the voice of Vivekanand, right? And that is what turned him from the life of active revolutionary politics to the life of spiritual, uh, what should I say, spiritual leadership. Okay, so let's take a look at this poem. Can you see the screen here? So his earliest poems from Ahana and other poems, right? These poems were written in Bengal and Baroda. So this is the first poem by Sri Aurobindo that you are trying. This is the first poem that you are going to study. Yes, can you say that?
So
Okay,
the
go ahead. What happened?
so the triumph song of Trishanku.
It's a triumph song of Trishanku. But what I'm asking you is, you have not read any poem by Sri Aurobindo, right? Ever? आज तक नहीं पढ़ी ना कोई poem आपने?
No, sir.
Okay, so this is the poem, and I want one of you to read it for me. Who will
So
read?
can I?
Yes, go ahead.
The triumph song of Trishanku. I shall not die. Although this body, when the spirit tires of its cramped resistance, shall feed the fires my house consumes, not I. Leaving that case, I find out ample and ethereal room. My spirit shall avoid the hungry tomb, deceiving death's embrace. Night shall contain the sun in its cold depths, time too must crease. The stars that labor shall have their release. I cease not, I remain. Ere the first seeds were sown on earth, I was already old, and when new, now unborn planets shall grow cold, my history proceeds. I am the light in stars, the strength of lands, and the joy of mornings. I am man and maid and boy, protein infinite. I am a tree that stands out singly from the infinite blue. I am the quiet falling of the dew, and am the unmeasured sea. I hold the sky together and abet the teeming earth. I was the eternal thinker at my birth, and shall be, though I die.
Right, good. So, what do you make of it? What do you mean by? And see, whenever you are given a poem, the first thing that should come to your mind is what does title tell us? Right. Very often, good poems do not uh, have titles like the titles of the essays. Right. They are not the summaries of the ideas, but they indirectly hint at the title or the theme of the poem, right? So indirection or vakrokti is one of the most prominent feature of poetic language, right? So what does the title, the triumph song of Trishanku, tell you? Have you heard of Trishanku?
No, sir.
Anyone who has heard of Trishanku? त्रिशंकु के बारे में किसने सुना है? No one? Nobody knows the myth of Trishanku? Okay. So Trishanku was a king who wanted to go to heavens. But unlike everyone else, he wanted to go to heaven in this body itself, right? You go to heaven by dying, but he wanted to go to heaven physically. So he approaches a great Rishi called Vasishtha, who was a Brahmin Brahma Guru, right? Uh, he was the spiritual guide of the gods, and he was a Brahmin, and he refused, right? That I can't send you to heaven physically. So he approaches the rival party, another Rishi called Vishwamitra, who was uh, a Kshatriya, and that's why he was declined Brahmarshi status, right? Because of his caste, Varna. So Vishwamitra says, okay, I will send you to heaven physically. So he does the rituals and the rites, and he uses his yogic power. So Trishanku, the king, started ascending the heavens directly. However, the gods were shocked. Indra especially were shocked, and Indra is known to get shocked every time, right? That's his job, probably. उसकी नौकरी ही वही है, पावर खतरे में, पावर हमेशा खतरे में ही रहती है, remember. So he was shocked and scared, and he approached Vishwamitra, and he apologized and said that please, we cannot accept Trishanku to heaven because nobody can come to heaven in body physically. So we have to send him back. Right. So they rejected Trishanku, and Trishanku started falling down from the heaven on earth. Vishwamitra, however, was adamant, and he says, no, if you don't accept him in the heaven, I will create another heaven, Trishanku's heaven, in between heaven and earth, where Trishanku will rule. So Trishanku hangs between heaven and earth, all right, something like suspended between two worlds, in limbo, right? He cannot come back to earth because Vishwamitra has already sent him, and he cannot go to heaven because gods have rejected him. So in between heaven and earth, right, Vishwamitra creates another world, another heaven, where Trishanku hangs upside down. Hmm? That's the story, right? I don't know how many of you had heard this story. कितने लोगों ने ये कहानी सुनी थी? How many of you have heard the stories of Trishanku? No one.
No, sir.
Okay. So now let's go back to the Aurobindo's poem here, right? The triumph song of Trishanku. What do you mean by triumph song? Triumph का मतलब क्या है? What do you mean by triumph? What's the mean? Vijay Geet, okay? Victory, correct? Victory song, right? So it's a song of Trishanku's victory. तो ये कौन सी विक्ट्री है? त्रिशंकु की जीत कहां पे हुई? कैन एनीवन टेल मी? त्रिशंकु जीता या हारा? Wins? How, Nityam? How did Trishanku win? Nityam? In what way did Trishanku win? Nityam, can you tell me how did Trishanku win? What do you think, Sanaya, Jia, Sneha, Prithvi? In what way did Trishanku win? Did Trishanku win or did he lose? His upside down curse was a loss, okay? Then what do you think? Then why does Aurobindo call it, Jaswin, the triumph song of Trishanku? Okay, he reached heavens, that can be his victory. Okay, let's read this poem. I will read this poem again, right? And then you tell me. The triumph song of Trishanku. I shall not die, although this body, when the spirit tires of its cramped residence, shall feed the fires my house consumes, not I. यहाँ पे I कौन है? Who is this I? I shall not die ऐसा कौन कह रहा है? Who is saying this? Trishanku, right? So, is it Aurobindo who is saying, or Trishanku who is saying, I shall not die, although my body, when the spirit tires of its cramped residence, shall feed the fires my house consumes, not I. Right? Is it Aurobindo speaking or Trishanku?
Trishanku?
Trishanku, okay. Okay. Trishanku, because he wants his body to go to heaven. It is Aurobindo who is speaking, but with Trishanku's perspective. Very good. So it is Trishanku's persona. Does anyone remember the term persona? Somebody made a presentation on persona and point of view. किसने किया था presentation? You have heard about it, says Ria. So persona इसके पर presentation आया था. तो glossary of literary terms में persona ऐसा word आता है. Right? And somebody made a presentation on that. Who was it? I don't know.
Sir, could you repeat, please?
Somebody from the class made a presentation on the term persona. Persona यानी mask, जो writer या poet पहनते हैं.
I did the presentation on it.
Right? So now you see why we discussed that term. अगर आपको पर्सोना पता नहीं है तो ये पोएम आपको समझ में ही नहीं आएगी, क्योंकि औरबिंदो त्रिशंकु का पर्सोना और कैरेक्टर अडॉप्ट करके बोल रहे हैं. वो खुद नहीं बोल रहे हैं, और खुद बोल भी रहे हैं वो भी हम देखेंगे. राइट? बट इट इज औरबिंदो यूजिंग द मास्क ऑफ त्रिशंकु. राइट? From Aurobindo, from Trishanku's point of view. So he says, I shall not die, although this body, when the spirit tires of its cramped residence shall feed the fire, my house consumes not I. What does this mean? I shall not die. मेरा शरीर जल जाएगा, मेरा घर जल जाएगा, मैं नहीं जल जाऊंगा, मैं नहीं मरूंगा. What does that mean? Can anyone tell me? What do you mean when Trishanku says, मेरा शरीर जल जाएगा, जो मेरा घर है, मैं नहीं मरूंगा? What does it? Maybe even if his physical bodies die, his spiritual body will be still alive, right? And self, right? His Atma is not mortal. His body is mortal, right? So I is the Atman, right? And which according to Advait is immortal because Atman and Brahman are one and the same. Yes, this is similar to Ravida's poem that we studied. Very good. So there is an expression of spiritual philosophy that Aurobindo is trying to put forth through his poem, right? He believes that त्रिशंकु क्या चाहता था? वो शरीर के साथ स्वर्ग में जाना चाहता था. He wanted to be immortal physically, right? But because he was thrown out, he could not go to heaven physically, right? That is what happened in the story. But even then, according to Aurobindo, Trishanku has won. Why? Because he knows that his body is going to die, his self, his Atman is going to heaven, he is immortal anyway, right? So, leaving that case, I find out ample and ethereal room. My spirit shall avoid the hungry tomb, deceiving death's embrace. So my spirit, that is Atman, is not going to die. It will avoid the hungry tomb of death's deceiving embrace. Is there any figure of speech here? Deceiving death's embrace? Any figure of speech? Death is personified, very good. Any other figure of speech? Deceiving death's embrace. The is repeated, so it's alliteration, right? Na. Can you call it alliteration? Yes. So a single line can have more than one figures of speech, right? Okay. Do you think there are meters and rhymes used in this poem? I shall not die, although this body, when spirit tires of the cramped residence, shall feed the fires my house consumes. Not I, right? ABBA. Jaswin, can you explain what ABBA is? You're right.
And by ABBA, I mean that the first and the fourth lines end with rhyming words, and the second
Right.
and third lines end with rhyming
Very
words.
good. Very good. Like die and I, right? Tires and fires in the first stanza. So, what is a stanza? Does anybody know what is a stanza?
पोयम में जो पैराग्राफ टाइप्स होते हैं वो
Exactly. पोएम में जो पैराग्राफ होते हैं उनको स्टैंजा कहते हैं, राइट? वेरी गुड. In the first stanza, the rhymes are die and I, tires and fires, ABBA. Leaving that case, I find out ample and ethereal room. My spirit shall avoid the hungry tomb, deceiving death's embrace. And it is personification, right? And hungry tomb, कौन सी figure of speech है? Personification, right? Correct. So how do you read a poem, right? And remember, we are learning how to read a poem, right? Not just how to, we are not studying poetry. We are studying how to study poetry, right? Or how to study a novel, or how to study a short story. So what we do here is we ask ourselves question that why is it a triumph song of Trishanku? यानी त्रिशंकु की जीत का विजय गीत है ये, राइट? तो कौन सी जीत है इसकी, राइट? सो टाइटल, asking questions about title is first thing. Second thing that you do is you try to identify the narrator or the persona or the speaking voice in the poem. And the speaking voice is not that of Sri Aurobindo, but Trishanku, right? And that is the irony of it. Night shall contain in its cold depths, night shall contain the sun in its cold depths. Time too must cease. The stars that labor shall have their release. I cease not, I remain. What he says is, Trishanku says here that night shall contain the sun in its cold depth. What does it mean? Personification hai. But night will, one day even sun will fall into night. ठंडे ठंडा हो जाएगा sun. Time too must cease. Time with capital T will also disappear. The stars that labor shall have their release. Stars that go on circling in the sky will be released. I cease not, I remain. Right? I am not going to finish. I am not going to vanish. Antithesis, right? How sun is going to be cold and die. Time is also going to go away. Stars also will be released, but I won't go because I am immortal. Or the first seeds, or is an old English word. Victorian English में use होता है. Or यानी पहले. Ere the first seeds means before the first seeds were sown on earth, I was already old. And when now unborn planets shall grow cold, my history proceeds. Right? Before the first seeds were sown on this planet, मैं उससे पहले ही बूढ़ा हो गया था. Right? Again, antithesis or paradox. Right? Jasmine, there is a difference between paradox and antithesis. Antithesis means two opposite ideas are put together. Oxymoron. Paradox is two ideas are resolved at a higher dimension, right? On a higher plane, contradictory things, both of them are true, right? That is called paradox, right? So, right from the beginning, triumph song of Trishanku itself is a paradoxical thing because Trishanku did not succeed in going to heaven. He was thrown out. तो वो हार गया है, राइट? तो ये हारे हुए बंदे का विजय गीत है. तो दैट इटसेल्फ इज पैराडॉक्सिकल एंड आयरॉनिक. आयरनी यानी आप कुछ और कहना चाहते हो, जो आप कह रहे हो वो उसका मतलब नहीं है, राइट? सो दिस पैराडॉक्स ऑफ द टाइटल itself, right? And paradox is resolved because Trishanku has realized that even if his body perishes, he is not going to perish, right? And even before the world began, he was already old. And now when unborn planet shall grow cold, my history proceeds. जो अभी पैदा ही नहीं हुए वैसे प्लैनेट ठंडे पड़ जाएंगे एक दिन, तब मेरा इतिहास तो चलता ही रहेगा. My history proceeds. I am the light in stars, the strength of lions and the joy of mornings. I am man, maid, and boy, protean and infinite. Protean means something that changes its shape, right? So, what figures of speech are these? I am the light in stars, the strength of lions and the joy of mornings. I am man and maid and boy, protean and infinite. What does it mean by that? Anyone? Anyone can explain me? What does it mean when you say, I am the light of in stars, the strength of lions and joy of mornings? I am man and maid and boy, protein and infinite. Anyone? What does it mean when I say I am the light of stars, strength of lions, joy of mornings, I am man and maiden boy, protein infinite? What does it mean?
I don't know the meaning of what he is saying. I just know he's mentioning that he is the basic essence of all of these things, and
Okay.
his form
And
varies.
you are absolutely right. But by and in what way does he have the essence of everything? And in fact, this is connected to the next stanza itself. I am a tree. पहले क्या कहता है? I am the light in the stars, strength of lions and joy of mornings. I am man and maid and boy, protein and infinite. I am a tree that stands out singly from infinite blue. I am the quiet unfalling of the dew. I am the unmeasured sea. So he has the essence of all this. You are right, absolutely. He has the essence of light, stars, that he is the light in stars, and he is the strength of lions, and he is also the joy of mornings. How is Trishanku light of stars, strength of lions, and joy of mornings? How can Trishanku be man and maid and boy? How is Trishanku a tree? How is Trishanku dew? And how is Trishanku the unmeasured sea? ये कैसे मुमकिन है? Okay, so let me tell you. See, why has Trishanku won, though he was rejected from the doors of paradise? Why has he won? Because he has realized that his self, Atman, is Paramatman, Brahma, right? The ultimate reality. And that's why it is completely immortal, right? Not just that, according to ancient Indian philosophy, the characteristics of Brahman are Sat, Chit, and Anand. Sat means being, Chit means consciousness, and Anand means joy. Right? So these are the basic features of ultimate reality, that is Brahma. So when you realize that you are that, right? Tattvamasi, आप वो हो, right? As Upanishads say, then you are the light of the stars, then you are the strength of the lion, you are the joy of the mornings, right? This realization of Advaita is what makes Trishanku a victor in spite of the fact that he is rejected from the doors of heaven. Is that meaning clear? That's the irony of the situation. The Trishanku तो हार गया है, वो सदेह नहीं जा सका स्वर्ग में, पर फिर भी वो जीत गया है क्योंकि उसे ये ज्ञान हुआ है, ये आत्मा और परमात्मा एक ही है, अद्वैत का ज्ञान हो, ब्रह्म ज्ञान हुआ है इसको, राइट राइट. And therefore he says, I hold the sky together and unbear the teeming earth. I was the eternal thinker at my birth and shall be though I die. So even if I physically die, I was always an eternal thinker. right? Who is neither physically born nor dies. So this realization of Trishanku is his victory, right? And one more way in which uh, the image of Trishanku is important, right? And that is because Trishanku is in between earth and heaven. And one of the important ideas that Sri Aurobindo wanted to promote here or propose here is that human being is in intermediate stage of evolution, right? He has not fully evolved, right? His consciousness is not completely realization of Atma and Brahma. It's not complete realization. He is intermediate. So man is superior to other animals and other beings on the planet, but at the same time, he's still not reached that thing, the ultimate realization. And so he is intermediate, right? So man has to evolve towards the supreme consciousness, according to Sri Aurobindo. That's the philosophy that Sri Aurobindo promotes in his most of his writings. Right? So even in this poem, Trishanku becomes a metaphor for man, right? Who has failed to conquer death, but he has still won because he has realized that he is the Brahma, right? He is not the mortal animal that he is. So this realization makes him an intermediary figure, right, in the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo. So idea of evolution of man is very important idea in Sri Aurobindo, right? Evolution, and you rise upwards to the ultimate level of existence. So man has not reached that ultimate level of existence where even the body may be divine, right? He is still in this limbo, but at the same time he has won the battle. Is the meaning clear? This is Aurobindo's philosophy of integral yoga and the evolution, spiritual evolution, and the Advait. And as Jasmine has pointed out, it is common in Kabir and Ravidas as well. Right? It was there in the Upanishads and Vedas that we studied. Right? So you can see the uh, continuation of certain ideas in Aurobindo, right, from Vedic, Upanishadic, and the Bhakti period. Any doubts, queries, questions about this poem? You have understood this poem? Yes, no, maybe, ha, na.
No, sir.
So what are the doubts? Doubts क्या है बताओ तो मैं solve करता हूँ. You see, you don't have any doubts. Okay, I thought you had doubts. When you said no, it means you have not understood SLM. Okay, nobody has any doubts, queries. So suppose please summarize. So that's what I did, right? So in spite of the fact that Trishanku has not succeeded in going to heaven physically, he has still won, right? And how has he won? Because Trishanku has realized that Atma and Brahma are one, and that's why he is immortal. So even if physically he dies, he is not going to die. His soul, his Atman is not going to die. Right? That is his victory. ये ज्ञान होना ही उसकी जीत है. Right? Nityam? There is another
Yes.
meaning that the term that the Trishanku uh, brings out, that Trishanku is hanging in limbo between heaven and earth. तो ये जो बीच वाला फेज है ना, वो इंसान का फेज है अकॉर्डिंग टू औरबिंदो. औरबिंदो कहना ये चाहते हैं कि हर इंसान बीच वाले फेज में है, इंटरमीडिएट फेज में है, एवोल्यूशन के, उत्क्रांति, स्पिरिचुअल एवोल्यूशन के बीच वाले फेज में है, जैसे त्रिशंकु है वैसे. राइट? तो वो उसका बॉडी तो मर जाता है. राइट? जो त्रिशंकु एक्चुअली जिंदा रखना चाहता था, वो उसकी हार है. पर उसकी जीत क्या है? वो जानता है कि वो शरीर नहीं है, वो आत्मा है. Is that clear, Nityam? Right. Anyone else? So if I ask you reference to context type questions, are you aware of RTC? Have you next week जो आपकी 8 तारीख को एग्जाम है, मिड सेम, 1 घंटे की, उसमें अगर मैं आरटीसी आपको पूछता हूं, हैव यू हर्ड ऑफ आरटीसी, रेफरेंस टू कॉन्टेक्स्ट? तो मान लो मैं ये लास्ट स्टैंजा आपको पूछता हूं एज एन एग्जांपल आई एम गिविंग यू. राइट? I hold the sky together and bear the teeming earth. I was the eternal thinker at my birth. I shall be, though I die. ऐसे लाइन्स अगर पूछता हूं ऐसे, तो आप लिखोगे कि these lines are taken from the poem The Triumph Song of Trishanku by Sri Aurobindo. Then you will give some information about Sri Aurobindo that we discussed, his philosophy, right? That we discussed today. And then explain how even though he dies, he is not going to die. The paradox of it. You have to explain this paradox, that how he was the eternal thinker and he will always be an eternal thinker though I die. Right? And in this poem, I is used as a persona. Trishanku is made use of mythical persona, myth as a persona that Aurobindo has used. Right? And you may want to talk about the rhyme scheme of sky, die, earth, birth. So that is the way in which you can answer to RTC. I may also ask you question from, say, for example, lines from Ravidas, yeah, lines from Seal Pattikaram, yeah, lines from whatever we have discussed, right? Then you have to explain it in context. तो आपको ये मैंने पेपर स्टाइल बता दी है, मिड सेम की और फाइनल एग्जाम के भी. मगर फाइनल एग्जाम ओपन बुक नहीं होगा, ये याद रखना. मिड सेम ओपन बुक होने वाला है. इज दैट क्लियर? और जो टेक्स्ट हमने डिस्कस नहीं किया है क्लास में, वो इंक्लूडेड नहीं है, मिड सेम के भी और एंड सेम के भी. डन? Any questions and doubts before we stop? We meet tomorrow and tomorrow is the last day for presentations. उसके बाद आपको presentations करने होंगे तो नहीं चांस मिलेगा. जिसका रह गया है वो कल कर दे. Okay then, so we stop for today. Tomorrow is a holiday, Jasween?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So maybe on 3rd I will take your extra class for presentations, जिसके presentation रह गए हैं उनके लिए. और 8th को हमारी मिड सेम टेस्ट है. राइट? क्वेश्चन पेपर स्टाइल आपको पता चल गया है, 4 में से 2 लिखने हैं ऐसे ऐसे टाइप क्वेश्चन, जिसमें आरटीसी भी आ सकता है, जैसे मैंने अभी कहा. Okay, so see you on Monday then. Right, I will tell you the exact time when we are going to meet. Maybe we'll meet earlier at 3 or so. If you have some other class, then we'll meet later. So let's meet on Monday. Okay, till then, please take care and see you on Monday. Yes, so we'll meet at 1 to 3 on Monday, right? Good. And those who have not sent their assignment should send me today. Today is the last day. So see you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.